All right, we've got another amazing episode of Shift Talk brought to you by MyWorkChoice. And today we've got a very special guest on. But before we get to her, I also have a new addition to the show, Holly Pennington, who is our director of marketing and usually the one who's working all of the magic behind the scenes, trying to make this pretty somehow and cleaning up everything I say so that it looks good on camera. So, Holly, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be on this side of the screen. I'm hoping to give a women millennial perspective to the podcast. And speaking of, I know that's something that our guest, Shannon, really appreciates is women in manufacturing, women in STEM is something that we are both big advocates for. So, Shannon, we're so happy to have you on the podcast. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for giving me the blessing to share my voice here on your podcast. A little bit about myself. So my name is Shannon Bumgarner. I have a 25 plus year career in manufacturing, which is not very many women can say that. So that's an exciting thing to share. What I like to say is that I'm a process engineer at heart. So I jokingly tell people that do not take me to the buffet line, do not take me to the TSA line, because I am the person who will find all the process flow errors and try to fix them on the fly, and the TSA folks do not really readily appreciate that.
Could I take you on my next trip? Because I just got back from Wisconsin and that was painful.
Oh, God, yeah, let's do it. Let's get the inefficiency out of that TSA wait line.
Love it.
I also host the Empowering Women in Industry podcast, very passionate about women in STEM, women in manufacturing, as you alluded to. Academically, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering, a Bachelor of Science degree in Pulp and Paper Technology, and I have my MBA. And like I said, I've worked for 25 plus years in industry doing lots of different things, from process engineering to manufacturing to quality. And then about 3 years ago, I did the pivot of my life and come to the customer side, sales side of the business. So we might touch on that later as well.
Wow.
What's the next degree you're going to get? That's not enough.
No, I'm done with school. I did it all in the front end, Adam. I couldn't take it anymore. I did it all in the front end, and I've been busy at work since then.
I could imagine. Okay, so first question. I know you talked about you did your education early on, and you've been in manufacturing for 25 years, which is incredible, which clearly means you started when you were 12.
Of course. Thank you, Adam.
You're
the
welcome.
Check is in the mail.
So did you see yourself in manufacturing, engineering, STEM as a little girl? Or is this something that you came to at a college age or once you had a career going? Tell us a little bit about how you got started.
When I was young, I actually used to play what maybe a typical female related activity. So I used to do like executive assistant, typewriter, that whole thing. But then I'll be honest, I fell in love with some very certain kinds of toys that I think really helped me develop the idea for problem solving. So one of it was the typical Lego blocks, but I love the Life Right. I also love the Etch-a-Sketch because obviously you could make things and then make them go away. So I think I started to learn at an early age that I liked problem solving type games. Fast forward, I'm a junior in high school. I'm thinking about what do I want to do when I grow up, and I'm not sure I've grown up yet, but that's a different story for a different day. And I looked at myself, and one thing that was super important to me was independence. I really wanted to be an independent person. And I also, contrary to my degrees that I talked about, I did not want to go to school forever. I didn't want to go get a PhD, at least not initially. So I really looked at what am I good at. And I know some folks are going to listen to this and cringe, but my favorite class in high school was chemistry. Bar
no,
I love chemistry. And then I was really good at math. And so I really was looking for a degree that I could marry the two. So I looked at chemical engineering, and it just seemed like a really good way to start a career. And that, back to your question, really drove me to actually choose manufacturing. So my dad worked in furniture, which I'm from Hickory, North Carolina. That used to be the furniture capital of the world.
Hickory.
Yeah. And my mom was in textiles. So that also was very prevalent back in the day in this area. So what I saw was the multiplier effect of manufacturing, right? The multiplier, how it came back to my family, how it came back to the community, and quite frankly, when it leaves, how devastating it can be to any community.
Yeah, it's such a small world that before we even met, we didn't know that we're sitting in Hickory recording this,
Yeah.
and we're actually in a 100-year-old textile mill that used to make gold toe socks.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep.
So it's a small world.
So we've talked a little bit about your passion for women in manufacturing. So I wondered what sparked that interest for you, and then also, especially for people that are in HR or in a leadership role in manufacturing right now, what can we do to create more opportunities for women in manufacturing?
Great question.
Yeah, so what sparked that interest for me was I love problem solving. And there's no other degree that I could think of where literally I went to school to learn how to solve problems. It was super hard. Like, I thought I was never going to get out. I swear I need one of those t-shirts that says I survived engineering school. But you really learn how to be problem solving. And that problem solving, what I think is inspirational about it is you can solve any kind of problems. And what I really have seen with women engineers in particular is that they have a value set that also goes along with it. So, for example, maybe they're very passionate about the environment and they want to use that troubleshooting or problem solving skill to get into that power, vision, or passion. So you asked a question about HR. I think that is part of it, right? Tapping into that vision that women have. I think when you look at women in STEM, we've gained some ground, but we're not quite there yet. So I think it's the National Science Foundation put out these numbers, but I think 35% of STEM workers are women. So we've made some changes. Unfortunately, it hurts my heart to say this, we're not there with engineering. I think the numbers I saw last were that 14 or 15% of working engineers right now are women. And what you see is that you have a really retention issue. So actually a lot of women will initially go into engineering, but then around the 11, 15 year mark of their career, you'll see it drop from about 50-some% that graduated that went in engineering. It drops all the way to like 23, 24%. So I think to your question, I think it's about retention. What is it that really grabs those women, right? So we do a lot of the focus on getting women to get into engineering, which we still need to do. But my passion is actually how do you get women to stay into the engineering fields? Some of the things that I think about actually I think benefit men and women. I don't think it's just for women. So some of it's flex work schedule, right? So let's get into paternity leave, right? So women are still, in many cases, the caregiver both for their parents, as well as children. Trying to find that flexible work schedule, what can be done to make that happen. And you're starting to see the company that I work for in my day job do it, and then you're starting to see that expand past a few weeks up to months at a time to allow that to happen. Another really small thing that I think you can do is, believe it or not, look at job descriptions. Because women are notorious to read a job description and go, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. I'm not advocating that you drop the level of qualification, but I'm saying you be thoughtful about, no kidding, what do you need to do this job? And don't just list a laundry list of 50 things that maybe a candidate could have. And then there's actually languaging that you can use that women are going to be more receptive to. And so I know we use one in my day job. You can actually put a job description through a translator and it'll say, yep, that's friendly, or hey, you might want to flip this wording a little bit, and it'll be more friendly toward females.
Really? What types of adjustments do you see in the language? I am curious about that.
Like thinking about, I know one word that I know is flagged good for women is like collaborative, right? I think we all want collaborative environments, but I think women tend to hold on that word a little bit more because they don't feel like they're going to be in it as a combative or assertive environment. Now, granted, I'm being very generic here and probably a little bit biased, but that's one that I've seen flagged.
That's really interesting. And have you seen other companies like the one you're at now start to implement those policies?
I think your bigger companies are. I think where you're probably getting stuck is probably in the mid-sized companies, because I think your bigger companies, they know they have to compete for talent, right? So they're out there benchmarking each other. So I think your bigger companies are probably taking this on. Where I think our opportunity is in the mid-range to smaller companies that just don't have the resources that a larger Fortune 500 company would have.
No, that makes perfect sense, because the same thing equates to when we talk to them about giving people flexible opportunities within their manufacturing plant, we do run into that same roadblock of that's just not how we've done it for the last 30 years and we've been fine. And you're not fine. Your production's at 60% and your turnover's at 350%.
Yep.
Why don't we start looking at things that are going to not only attract people to this job, but keep them in it for years, hopefully decades.
There's another program. It was actually launched by the Society of Women Engineers, but it's called Relaunch. This can apply to men and women because I think sometimes we step away from the workforce. It could be to raise children. It could be for an ailing parent, right? It could be for a lot of different reasons that we step away. There's some criteria around it, but essentially it's like a 12 to 15 week, they call it a returnship program. So you would come back as a returnship rather than internship, and you would get put in a role to help you reacclimate yourself to corporate America. And then the goal was to find that person a job, assuming that it's working out for both parties in the organization, to help them come back after a long gap in their resume.
That's really interesting. I had not heard about that program. Have you, Holly?
No, that's news to me.
I'll have to
but
look
it
that up.
sounds really helpful, especially for those people, like you said, that have to step away. We often survey our workers, and a lot of them happen to be women. And we were just digging into what are workers saying that haven't been working with MyWorkChoice. And one of the very common ones were related to health and family obligations that they had to step away from working with MyWorkChoice.
Well, and I think Shannon made a good point that it's not even just the female workers, it's the male workers too. Does your company have a good paternity leave policy? Because if not, how are they able to take those weeks off to be able to support a new child?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things I think is really important. I'm obviously a woman and I'm very focused on women in STEM. I think that these policies support all genders. So I think it's just like when you talk about, disabilities and finding ways to improve products or improve workplaces for people that may not have the same or different ability levels. It helps us all when we look at the workplace in a different way.
Have you seen that as an overall shift? I know in previous roles you were in the HR seat, that HR is needing to change the way they manage and view the workforce to a more human-centric approach instead of being the place people go to have a complaint or think about, I'm going to get fired if Shannon puts a meeting on my calendar. How have you seen that change over the years?
I think COVID changed it for everything, and I know people are tired of hearing that, but I think something's really important, and this is actually what changed my mindset. Let me paint the stage for a second. So It is March of 2020. The company that I work for just went through a huge planned restructuring. And then I was bright enough, decided that was a really good time to take a new people leadership role. So here in April 2020, the world is blown up, right? My company is blown up. Quite frankly, we're going through some reduction in forces that were related to the restructuring of the company. And here I am managing a new team, most of them I've never met before in person.
That sounds like a blast. I don't see the problem, Shannon.
Here's what I learned. You and I are on video today, right? But what I learned was when I would meet with them on video, here comes somebody's cat, here comes somebody's dog, here comes somebody's kid, right? Here goes their husband or wife or partner, whatever in the background. And I thought, we used to think that when I stepped into the building, that all of that didn't matter, or I needed to put all of that in a different place. When COVID happened, we could no longer do that because it was literally in our face. Yeah. And I had this aha over those couple of years or a year and a half that I did that job, is that this is actually the way it should be. This is what we should have been looking for and asking for, that I don't need to put my authenticity on the line. When I'm having a bad day, I don't need to tell you that everything's great. I can be more open. I can be more vulnerable. And I had the best employee engagement scores I'd ever had when I did that. Fast forward 18 months, I get on the phone with this new team. They don't know who I am. I've never been in this part of the business. And you could just hear the crickets on the other end of the phone. You could hear what is this crazy lady doing here? Can we please put her back? Can we send her somewhere else?
Did we keep the receipt?
Yeah, exactly. Can we return her, please? And I thought, how am I going to do this? I've got a team of 15 or 20 people that don't know me, that quite frankly, I don't know this side of the business. Technically, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue what I'm doing. How am I going to get through this? And I put my humanness on the line. I'm vulnerable. I say, I don't know the answers. Help me. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you grow. And in that period of time, we've had a lot of growth at the company. We've promoted 9 people. We've
That's
had
great.
double-digit employee engagement gains in a myriad of categories, from direct manager effectiveness to diversity and inclusion, a whole host of other things, growth and development, recognition. And it's all been hard work, don't let me get wrong. But my point is that being a human-centric leader matters. And it matters because the biggest thing that I've learned is treat those people like family.
That's a great point. And as you said, that is a massive shift away from the role that not just HR, but anyone in leadership had been trained up through especially for you and I know Holly keeps me honest because I love it. I tell her this all the time. I'm like, there's so many things that the way in which you handle it or the way in which you ask questions, to me, internally, I'm like, oh my, I can't believe she just said that. But I wish I would have said that when I was in her shoes, because she's great about setting boundaries. She's great about asking questions about what's my future progression, and not in a way that is, when am I going to be CEO? I expect that in the next 30 days, right?
I'm
That's
not
the
so sure I
whole.
want that job anyway, just saying.
There we go.
Also
There we
true.
go, all the way.
But it's an honest discussion of, I have healthy ambition. I want to continue learning. I want to continue growing. Help me to get there. And it was a great experience for me to see that and go, oh, that's a great way to approach this, because then it's a win. I get a much better employee that is growing and learning as she's doing her job. And we're having honest discussions about, okay, where do you want to be in 2 years? How do we get you there? Instead of you continue to work and you become more and more frustrated and disgruntled because you feel like nobody's identifying or even acknowledging that you have needs as well.
When I get up every day, I look at my calendar and I say what things are non-negotiable. And I try to, I don't say I always do it, but I do my best to make that people. And if I have to make decisions in my day and I have enough leeway, I make sure that those people things are what I don't leave undone at the end of the day.
Oh, interesting. I had never heard that approach.
Going back to just something that you said about retention, I think having a human-centered focus on your people will help with retention. I think workers are wanting that feedback. I'm just speaking a little bit generationally, is I think millennials and Gen Z really do care about that human interaction.
Yeah, the one thing that I've come to believe over the last few years is you have to have the courage to see and to truly be seen. And I know that it's a really powerful statement, in my humble opinion, because think about what you have to drop, that facade you have to drop for people to truly see you, especially as a leader. That's scary as crap. I can say that from this seat.
It is.
But then it's also the courage to truly see people on their good days and their bad days, or when maybe they've had a loss in their life, or maybe they're not having the best day. How much does it mean to say, I'm so sorry you're going through that. I don't understand it, but let me know how I can support you.
It's about building trust so that they're willing to be open about it. I think good leaders provide the example. They are the example. So being a little bit more open about, yeah, maybe not everything's okay, will help build trust so that your employees will also feel like they can reciprocate. I also see it as more like that mindset switch. It's not transactional. It's more relational in the workplace.
Yep. And I think that's how you retain people, because it's pretty easy to leave, not easy, but easier to leave a job or leave a paycheck than it is to leave a leader who's truly invested in you. I think it's harder. I'm not saying you don't do it. If you're going to get a 50% raise and you really need the money, you might do it anyway, but
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But yeah,
You wouldn't
right.
do that, Holly.
nose goes.
For- Well, and it's funny that wearing pink, and we met you through Stacy Cassio, who runs the Pink Mentor Network.
yeah.
And I feel like a lot of what she advocates for are a lot of the same things we're talking about, right? It's not just about women, it's about connecting better with your entire organization. How do you really intentionally set aside time so that you can have those conversations?
I'm going to tell you the first thing, it's hard. It's simple, but it's hard. And I think there are a few things that you can do. I tend to start my day off with some connection point. It might be a LinkedIn message to someone. It might be pinging somebody that knows how to get a bad time at work and say, hey, how you feeling today? I know you were sick yesterday. I try to create that, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of my day. I think, too, and this is hard for me because I'm very much a type A-driven personality, but is when you have a meeting, I try to slow down and say, how is everybody doing today? Or crack a joke. I think humor is a big way to do it, right? Because everybody needs to laugh. You're stressed. There's a lot going on. Laughter is great medicine.
So I'm getting permission to have bad dad jokes at all our meetings?
Yes,
is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
I feel like you
Always
already
do.
did it.
We have Dad Joke Friday, actually. We do dad jokes on Friday.
That sounds amazing.
Yep, you got my full permission now.
Okay. Sorry, Holly.
That's okay.
Shannon said I could do it.
This is right on brand for you, Adam. So I am in full support. I'm really curious from your perspective, as the manufacturing world is often changing, what shifts are you thinking is going to happen in 2025, and what should we be prepared for?
I think I have one theme, and that's called the acceleration of change. I also think it ties into human-centered leadership, but I want to answer your question. I want you to think about something for a second. Think about how social media has upended our lives in all kinds of different ways. Do you know that Facebook was started in 2004? Think about that. In 20 years, a social media technology has upended our lives. And so I'm not going to go down the whole artificial intelligence train. I know we've all heard a lot about it. But I think when you look at manufacturing, I think it's being able to be adaptable to the acceleration of change. I know it's scary, but it's like retooling ourselves for what is coming. I also think it's going to impact our innovation cycles. Think about how fast feedback comes now. Both B2B feedback and B2C feedback comes. So our innovation, I'm going to tell you, I work at a larger company and we got a lot of work to do when it comes to innovation cycle. But I think it's really going to change how fast we can go to market. How can we get those product requirements out there? What does that look like? I also think that we've got the skills gap, and I know you all talk about this a lot on this podcast. I'm in the HVAC industry right now. Mm-hmm. We have a huge technician gap. And so I think anybody that's in an industry like mine, we're trying to find ways to take this gap into an opportunity, right? How can you bring in marginalized groups, maybe people that come from a social economic environment where they've not had the opportunity to go to school, or maybe women that never considered going into a trades. I'm a big women in trades fan. So how can we figure out creative ways to close that skills gap? I think that's going to continue in 2025. No surprise there. So those are the top 3 that come to my mind. The only thing I'd like to end with is really think about what I just said earlier, which is the courage to see and truly be seen. I think if you approach your work with that, whether you're a people leader or not, I think it will dramatically change how you face your workday. And I think it'll help you sometimes see the joy in adversity.
That's great. How can people get a hold of you and in touch with you, Shannon, so that way they can follow your podcast and things you're posting out there?
Yep. So you can find me most readily on LinkedIn, and then you can find us on the Empowering Women in Industry. So on any of your favorite podcast platforms, and you can also go look at our Empowering Women in Industry website, and you can find it there as well.
Awesome. Really appreciate you coming on today. This has been fabulous. We definitely have to meet up IRL. Is that what they say, Holly?
In real life. Yep.
You got it.
That was fire. Really appreciate you coming on. This was great.